The views and opinions expressed therein do not necessarily reflect those of News Web Radio Company or its management.
Hey guys, thanks for joining in on another episode of Life, Love, and the Grind. I'm Raza Siddiqui here with my wife, Sarah Sadat, and remotely, Sean Allen. It's supposed to be a great show today. I know I say that every week, but how can it not when both of these guys are going to be tributing me as a father? You know what they say, I will be your father figure. So, Sarah, why don't you start off the show and tell people what you really appreciate about me and lay it on thick.
We should just do a whole hour show about this, right?
Well, I'm telling you.
I'm going to keep it short and simple. Raza has come into our lives and given us so much excitement that we don't know what to do with. So we appreciate him for all of the stuff that he brings into our life, especially the color and the craziness and the randomness, but we really love him. We appreciate everything that he does, along with my father, my stepfather, and my grandfather, my uncles, all of you guys out there. My father-in-law is another amazing person for putting up with Raza for all these years, and he continues to do that. So to all the fathers out there, happy Father's Day.
I woke up early today, if you can believe it, Sean. At 7 a.m., I was listening to the radio. I listened to this station as I normally do and heard In Your Head, where both the co-hosts actually had their daughters come and participate in the show. I could not even have my kids call in. So that gives you an idea of how this relationship works. Yet I'm wearing their Lyle's best dad or whatever shirt that they insisted I wear on this show. Mm-hmm. Such as fatherhood.
Shout out to all fathers. You know, fathers are backbones of the family. We appreciate everyone. We had a great Mother's Day show. Now we're going to have a Father's Day show.
Sean, you had a great dad. Tell us about Jim Allen. Tell us about the Jim Allen.
The Jim Allen. Jim Allen, president of the Bricklayers Union, going on 17 years. He's one of 8 kids. He was raised by a great father, my grandfather. He's doing great. He's enjoying life. We're just relaxing. It's a gorgeous day. And he's just enjoying life a little bit. He's a hardworking man. And, he's been a good union man for God only knows how long. I think about 40-something years. So he's always been the hardest working guy I know. So shout out to all the fathers and everyone.
Well, and I know he's, he's a father to you, but he's inspirational to a lot of us. I know, he's given me advice, sometimes solicited, unsolicited, but he is one that always cares about the people who he cares about and tries to keep people on the right track. So happy Father's Day to you, Mr. Allen. As I call him, I've known him for years. I will not call him Jim. A matter of principle. To me, he's Mr. Allen. Yeah. But we have some great guests today, and I'm going to start it off by the reason we have these guests lined up is as Father's Day approaches us, I want to give ideas to our listeners about some of the things in Chicagoland that they can partake in. We have, and Sarah helped me out with this, Sarah's a lot better with pronunciation than me. We have Amanda Scotese, correct, Sarah? And she's with Detour Chicago, and then we also have Tom
Szklarski.
That's it.
Szklarski from Waggy Tails.
From Waggy Tails. He also has the podcast, Who's Training Who? And what's going to be interesting about the discussion we have with Tom is he's talking about the separation anxiety. That I didn't even think of this, that pets, the four-legged offsprings of many people are kind of going through the separation anxiety as people are returning back to work. So that's something that he's going to be talking to us about. Sarah, I know you have a lot of questions. Why don't you start us off?
Yeah, and Tom, welcome to the show. Can you hear us?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I can. Thanks for having me.
Tom, it's a pleasure. And just to give you a little bit of an introduction to how I know Tom, Tom's worked in the sports world. He's always kind of done that. It's his passion. He's also, since sports have been put on hiatus, found other ways to kind of explore his passion, make a living, as a lot of our people in that world are currently going through. Tom, you've kind of found a little niche for yourself. Tell us about this little niche.
Yeah, so it actually started a couple years ago. I was kind of got burned out working in the industry, being a freelance camera operator. And so I was looking for what else could I do, even if it was just like a side gig, just something to do. And so we had issues with our first dog, who we still have, but we have 2 now, but we had 1 at the time. We were having trouble finding daycares for our dog that I approved, that I was okay sending our dog to where I live. And so that got me thinking, well, maybe I could do it better. And so I started the process of researching. I went to dog training school, which I'm still going to, and learning all I could about what's best for the dog. And so for 2 years, I've been trying to do that. I've run into money problems, not that I'm poor, just that I don't have enough to open up a facility. It takes a lot of money to open up a facility, so I don't have it. So I've had to start doing dog walking and dog sitting just to try to prove that my company can make money, which, it is. Not so much during the pandemic, since nobody's traveling and people are home. They don't necessarily always need a dog walker. It's starting to pick up a little bit now, but it's still not quite where it was before all this happened. So,
well, Tom, I'm gonna kind of ask this question. People are starting to go back to work. We're entering the new phase of the reopening of Illinois. Something that you mentioned that I didn't even think of is animals are feeling anxiety, right? Like they've gotten used to having their owners here. They've decided, okay, this guy's going to be here. I might as well make it work. That's your space. This is mine. Here's the tape I put on the floor. But now all of a sudden the owners are leaving. What's that going to be like for these pets? I mean, are they going to start tearing things up in the absence of the two-legged creatures that share their docile?
Right, and so separation anxiety in animals is a hard thing to define, because obviously dogs can't talk to us and tell us what they're really feeling. So sometimes when people assume that a dog, he's whining, he's tearing stuff up, he's separation anxiety, in reality, it could be that the dog is just bored. The dog, when you think about what is it, a dog is supposed to sleep about 15 to 18 hours a day. That's their normal, that's their genetics, that's what they're supposed to do. But in that time that they're awake, they need something to do. Have you ever sat at home without TV, without internet, and just sat? That's what dogs do at home when you're not there. You're not giving them enrichment to do during the day. So sometimes that separation anxiety is really just boredom. They just need something else to do. They need, so things you can do when you starting to go back is get back into a routine. Dogs are just like people. They like routine. They like consistency. Start leaving the house if you haven't left the house at all, since this started. Start leaving the house like you would for work if you're going to go to work. Or if you're only going to work for a couple days a week, leave during those couple days a week. Start with maybe leaving for an hour, and then you just keep increasing it so that your dog gets used to you being gone for a while. It doesn't mean you have to go to work. You can go just to the store, go to, wherever, go bike ride or something like that, just to give your dog time away from you. That starts getting everybody back into the momentum that, hey, he's not going to be here all day. I have to hold it. I have to, do this or whatnot. But it's also important to give.
Maybe the dog will change the locks. If it's anything like my children, the dog is exploring out of the box solutions to this.
I'm telling you, I'm really looking forward to Raza going back to work. I'm rejoicing internally. There's a lot of space here, and it's being occupied.
And you know what? Dogs are the same. Some dogs, not every dog, but some dogs are the same way. They're actually like, they're finally gone. I can sleep. 'Cause like I said, dogs really do like to sleep 15 to 18 hours a day. And they need more sleep than we do. And so if you always see your dogs, you're like, the dog sleeps all the time. Well, that's what they're supposed to do. And so sometimes when people leave, it gives them time to just relax and sleep. But some dogs can't handle that either. And so you sometimes have to consult a professional if you think your dog has separation anxiety, because it could be truly separation anxiety, or it could just be that you just need to give your dog something to do while you're away, which could be that you give in the morning before you leave, or at night, I should say. You make I don't know if you ever heard of a Kong. You see them in PetSmart and all the stores. They're these big rubber things that if you leave it with the dog, there's a 99% chance that your dog's not going to rip it apart and swallow anything to choke or anything like that. But what you can do is, instead of, a lot of people feed their dogs by just throwing the food in the bowl in the morning and then walk away, let your dog graze, or, some people are way more strict than that. But what you can do is with the Kong, if you get a big enough one and there's different types of Kongs that are softer to harder for, I have power chewers in my house, so I always have to get the black ones, and even then, some of them have been destroyed. But what you can do is either put breakfast, like their food, in the Kong the night before, mix it with bananas, with peanut butter, with any, yogurt, any, dog friendly food, freeze it at night, and then in the morning, you give them the Kong, that's frozen. Well, now when you leave, they have something to do for a couple hours, and that's enrichment because they're using their tongue to lick and to get the food, and so it makes them tired. So then they go to sleep. It's just like if you take your dog for a walk where you let them sniff. There's different types of walks, and I could talk forever about dogs, so just stop me if I'm rambling too much.
No, this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. So for all of you guys that are listening out there, you can go ahead and listen to Tom talk for hours and hours on his podcast about dogs and how to train for how to take care of your dogs, not just during this time, but also as you're kind of going back to work and kind of facilitating the new normalcy that we're hopefully going to be getting into very, very soon.
Right, and we did do a couple episodes where it was what to do when your dog is going back. We talked to an author, Emily Strong of Pet Harmony, and she wrote a book about enrichment, and we talked about going back. I forgot if it's episode 3 or 4. It's one of those, but you'll see it if you look at the podcast. And she had some great. She explained what enrichment is, and how it's and what does that actually mean. And it was a really cool episode for me because I learned a lot about what I'm still learning, and that's one thing. If you ever talk to a trainer or anybody in the pet industry and they're like, we're experts, you need to walk away from them, because nobody is an expert in the dog world, because everything's always changing. Science doesn't always change, but things we learn new things every year about dogs and what to do. And if anybody says they're an expert, that means they stop learning, and they might be doing using techniques that were old or ideas that aren't current.
Tom, I love the name of your podcast. For anyone listening, it's called Who's Training Who Podcast. And the reason it really resonates with me is I remember hearing a story once where there's, aliens who come from outer space, and they're kind of just observing the Earth, right? They're looking at the different species, and they see the human being going after the dogs and kind of cleaning up their poop, and the dog is up front, and they're like, the dog must be the dominant species. Look at this other species just like doing everything for it. But it just kind of reminded me of that story I heard when I heard the podcast. We see the picture, if our listeners are watching to this on Facebook, of you and the dog kind of engaging. Tom, who's training who?
Right. It kind of depends, and every dog is different. The name came. Me and my co-host Allie Evanson of I Got This Sit. She is one of the few trainers, at least in the western suburbs, that has a board and train that is completely positive based. She doesn't use shot collars, doesn't use pinch collars. It's all positive based. So we were trying. She's one to have cute little, not normal names, and so. Who's Training Who came up when I was studying, or when I am studying the dog training stuff of, sometimes because training is a whole nother topic that we can talk multiple shows over if we really wanted to about it. But, sometimes dogs are smarter than we think, and they actually train us how to do things, dogs know what they want. Dogs really have like a mentality of a toddler. So when you're dealing with dogs, you kind of have to think in that. If you've ever dealt with a toddler, that's what a dog is, except they have superpowers. They have a really good sense of smell, and they have genetics are playing a keen role in how they do things. And so they know how to get they're based on pure emotion. To a point, that's kind of how you have to think about it, where they do what benefits them. A dog sits, like if you train a dog to sit, they're going to sit because they get a treat. Dogs don't normally sit in the quote wild. They don't naturally sit at a door to be let out or sit to get food. They just go and get the food. But they know that if they sit, they get a treat. And depending on the treat, they'll sit more. They'll do other things. A big thing I hear about is my dog won't come when I call them. And my first thing is, what's their motivation to come back to you? Why would they come back to you if they're chasing a squirrel, if there's a person at the fence, or there's like something cool smelling over there? What do you have that makes your dog want to come back?
Well, it's very much like our co-host, Sean Allen. He keeps coming back because my wife cooks him meals. And as a matter of fact, it's the same reason I come back. It's the motivation, so I completely get it.
Right.
Sarah, again, is speechless. We tend to have this tendency.
And sometimes, just to add on, and then we can move on from that, but what the motivation is different for every dog. So sometimes a little snack is great for some dogs. Some dogs you need to get like the juicy hot dogs, liverwurst, and in our last podcast, Allie was talking about training one of her own dogs, who the motivation, the dog, because like most dogs are food motivated and some dogs aren't. This dog was ball motivated. And so she had to figure that out, that he would do a lot just for the ball, to be able to play with the ball, run with it, catch it. And then, even to add on to that, you have to figure out what about the ball is rewarding. Is it that you throw it and they can get it? One of her other dogs, she just wants to chew the ball. So that's her reward. You don't have to throw it. You just give her the ball. She gets to chew on a little bit. That's a reward. So, it's training a dog is way more complicated than we all think. And like I said, I can talk for hours, and that's why I did a podcast, was so we could talk for hours.
Well, Tom, before you do talk for hours, we are going to take a break for our small business advertisers. But I do want to remind people that when we come back, we're going to be talking with, and Tom, you had mentioned this, it's good for owners to get out of the house and do something else. Well, what is a guy to do, right? We've been in quarantine forever. So we're actually going to talk to someone who benefits our tourism industry in Chicago, who's kind of shined a spotlight on the cultural institutions that people should see and some of the hidden gems. We're going to be talking to Amanda Scotese with Detour Chicago. Or is it Chicago Detours?
The Chicago Detours.
Chicago Detours. And Amanda, we look forward to hearing from you a little about what you've done to kind of stay afloat during quarantine and get your messages out there, stay at home, and we'll talk to you right after these messages.
This is Louis Geyer from GWC Injury Lawyers. Now that cannabis is legal in Illinois, an understanding of the law and the risks associated with ingesting cannabis is critically important. Under the Cannabis Act, you can legally ingest marijuana only in a very limited number of places. Not in public, not on government or school premises, and not even in your own condo or apartment if your landlord has a no smoking policy. A positive test is potentially lethal to your rights in 3 key areas: employment, work injuries, and driving. So if your employer has a zero tolerance drug and alcohol policy, you can be terminated if you fail a drug test, even though your cannabis consumption was legal. If you're hurt on the job and test positive for cannabis, the legal presumption is that your accident was caused in part because of the cannabis, and your workers' compensation rights can be totally denied. DUI laws have not changed. Impaired means impaired, and a DUI due to cannabis or alcohol can ruin your career. If you want to indulge in legal THC before you ingest, read up on your rights at gwclaw.com.
Megan Financial is an independent retirement and financial services firm dedicated to the working men and women of organized labor. Megan provides straightforward, custom-fit financial advice and specializes in defined benefit and defined contribution pension plans, as well as participant and retiree health and welfare benefits. Megan Financial has the knowledge and experience to navigate the union member through all phases of life. Call 708-444-1090.
Securities and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisors LLC, member FINRA, SIPC, a broker-dealer and registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Office location at 5321 South 94th Avenue, Orland Park, Illinois, 60462.
Raza Siddiqui, Sarah Sadat, Sean Allen, joining you on Life, Love, and the Grind. We've got 2 great guests. We heard from Tom, owner of Waggy Tails and Who's Training Who podcast. Now I'm really looking forward to getting to Amanda Scotese, who's with Chicago Detours. Amanda, tell us what it is that you do and how you've been doing it.
Sure. So we are a tour company. We usually do walking and bus tours for curious people. Our tours integrate architecture, history, culture. We go inside buildings. We do like interior architecture. We go to historic bars. We talk about.
You hear that, Sean?
Tours.
No, I was just saying, Sean, one of the things he was telling me is, man, I can't wait till the state reopens. I got to hit the bars. Now I can teach him a little about the history and some of the institutions of historical significance while Sean consumes his adult beverages.
Don't worry, the bars are up north. The bars will open up north, so life's okay.
So you've been supporting the economy in your own way, Sean. We love it.
I am. I'm trying to do my part.
Amanda, sorry, the bar
Yes,
just kind of
yes,
excited
it
Sean
is
and
totally
myself. So
possible. You can drink and you can learn at the same time. It can absolutely happen. Yes. So yeah, we do tours about all kinds of fun stuff around Chicago. Downtown, north side, south side, west side. We go all over the city.
tell us some of the, here's the thing, the south side, the west side, I've done a lot of tours and they've always been loop centric. They've always focused on what's in the downtown area. I'm very curious to find out what are some of the things that you would profile in the south and the kind of the west areas of the city. Because I think we do need to have a good ability to have more of a diverse perspective in what it is that constitutes our great city, including neighborhoods for various things. So please do shed some light on that.
It's everywhere. So part of our angle with Chicago Detours is we like to bring people to explore stories and places locals don't know. So while we do tours downtown, we also love to take them out into the neighborhood. So the south side is particularly where really the roots of Chicago history are. You've got the industrial roots of the city, the factories, the first real mansions of Chicago. I mean, south side is where you really tell the story of Chicago. That's where the stockyards were. We do tours that go into like the Bridgeport neighborhood, historically working class neighborhood, and really talk about, you know, not just the lives of the rich and the famous, but the real people who really built Chicago and really make it into the incredible city that it is today.
You know, and I know Sean's very excited about that because Sean and I are both labor leaders. We always talk about the kind of the labor history of Chicago, and I am very fascinated to see some of these tours where you kind of show that perspective, like the middle class, maybe the Chicago bungalow, along with the mansions. Sean, what do you think?
Well, you know, it's crazy. You know, we take Chicago for granted, I think, a lot because, you know, we're from this area. I'm in the city all the time. And I work down there. But, I mean, it's such great history in Chicago, especially with the labor movement. I mean, it's ground zero for, you know, all the greatest unions and greatest union leaders. So it's kind of an interesting take when you can really pull back and see everything that Chicago is and has to offer. I mean, I've never done one of these tours. And like I said, I've lived here my whole life, and it's kind of crazy how much history we have.
You know, I think that would probably be a great first date, or a brutal one if you don't get along with her. But Sean, you and I are always talking about, as a single guy, we're always talking about kind of like some of the things that you could do.
Correction. Huh? Sean is single. Roz is happily married. And I will accentuate the happily part.
Wait, a further clarification. Part of this was true before stay-at-home order. Now we'll just say, you know, I'm there. but Sean, back to your first dates. What do you think? You're gonna try to engage in some of this kind of historic overview of our great city?
I mean, it sounds pretty good to me.
No, and you know what? I was actually hearing from Amanda. Actually, my husband was talking with Amanda on how she's making some of these tours available for people. So, Sean, when you do take that girl out, you can like brush up on your skills by, you know, coming off Rico Suave there by knowing some of these historic facts. So, Amanda, tell us a little bit about what it is that inspired you into kind of making some of these tours online and available for the rest of the Chicagoland.
So we when COVID broke out, we decided that we still wanted to be able to share the stories and our love for Chicago in whatever way we could. So we transferred to offering them virtually. And it was just a total experiment. We threw it out there and people loved it. And people were coming as regulars to the live virtual tours. So just like a live radio show, people tune in live, they can ask questions. The cool thing about doing it through Zoom, people can also chat, so they can say things like, you know, oh, how cool, or, you know, we do it during happy hour, so people talk about what they brought to drink. So we've been doing these free live virtual tours every day since lockdown. And we've found that it's a really cool way that people can experience this city, and they're visual. So we have, we're either leading them by Google Street View, so you can actually see 360-degree views of a regular neighborhood street or of spectacular architecture in downtown Chicago. Or then we do also talks where they're just real quick, 25 minutes long, and we put together historic images and the tour guide narrates the story. And we've been able to do so many fun things because, when you're on a tour, you are geographically bound to what you can feasibly do within that limited amount of time. And so the really fun thing for us as tour guides, we're a small business, we're a team of 5. And, we've been able to kind of say, oh, well, there's this topic that I'm really interested in, and I'm going to throw together something that I could never even make into a tour because it's on opposite ends of the city. So we've been having a lot of fun with it.
So I'm forever a matchmaker for Sean. Which tour will give him the most points with the ladies?
This is a dating thing, man. This is just a matchmaking thing for me, actually.
You know what? I've got it. I think, all right, so actual tours that are in person, we're going to be reopening our walking tours here in a few weeks. Our signature tour is the Loop Interior Architecture Walking Tour, and I believe that it would most impress the ladies because there's a lot of culture and art and also sparkly, beautiful things on that tour. Like we look at Tiffany mosaic ceiling in the old Marshall Field department store, Tiffany stained glass, and there's a lot of Louis Comfort Tiffany sparkly kinds of things on that one. So if you could take the lady into the former Marshall Field department store, which of course is Macy's on State Street, and be able to point out the gorgeous ceiling and actually tell her some history about it, I think that could be some serious brownie points.
When you were talking about the rings, I could just see like the sweats of bead just beating down Sean's forehead. But yeah, actually those facts you were talking about, Sean, I think that would be a great idea. As a matter of fact, Sean, when you go on your first date, I think we would like to videotape it and share it with our viewers and also our listeners and kind of profile what it is that you do, Amanda, because it sounds like quite an experience.
I'm a very happy bachelor, and I'm a very private person, so I will not be videotaping any of my dates' personal life. But thank you, guys.
Well, we're always here, Sean, if you would like to showcase your private life in front of the camera, like how Raza and I usually do it.
With discretion, Sean. We have our limits.
With discretion.
Family show.
But I think there's another portion.
Father's Day family show.
All right, so let's bring it back to the Father's Day thing, right? The first time that I took any of our kids out to go see the Chicago architecture, like the 5-year-old, the 3-year-old, anybody at that age level, their eyes just kind of sparkle up because it looks like huge castles for them. Is there like a private, is there a family show, a family tour that you recommend, Amanda? Kind of something that, will also help our children kind of walk around the city, but like not get too tired because otherwise mommy or daddy will have to carry them on their shoulders.
Of course. Yeah, no, we do private tours all the time for family groups and also corporate. So when it's with a family, the great part about that is, if the kids get really excited about a certain thing, then we take the tour in that direction and we can kind of cater the way we talk about things so that it's really based on looking at things and stories and ways to engage kids, which honestly is also the most fun way to engage adults too. And just making it a way that everyone can kind of have a good time. So we do private tours. We can do them with a chauffeured sedan or, bigger family. We get vans and also just walking too. You can hop on public transit and that can be fun. Maybe not as comfortable for some people right at this very moment in time, but all kinds of fun stuff that we can do with families. And then we also have where people have been bringing their teenage kids onto our free live virtual tours that we've been doing because it's all kinds of different topics and some kids really get into learning about design and history and buildings, architecture, that kind of a thing.
I love how you're talking about the things you can learn, and one of the things that really fascinates me about history is we can learn not just what's the best way to say this? We can learn how to get together. We can learn kind of like the agreements that have worked, that haven't worked. And I'm wondering, has there been any, or do you currently we've noticed recently there's like a bridge in cultural experiences, right? There's this phenomenon of two different Chicagos. There's an experience of minority communities, and then there's an experience I've heard about how some of these communities don't see what's happening in Chicago, downtown area, and vice versa. Is there anything you do along the historical context that kind of showcases like the Black experience in Chicago versus what people normally see? I know Bronzeville has a very rich history. We were talking about labor earlier. The Pullman Porters on the city's south side is one of the fascinating stories about the labor movement in Chicago. And I think it's it's paramount that we know the different contributions of populations within our city, all the little threads that make for this great fabric that we call Chicago. Kind of tell me what you do or what you're planning to do or what you may have done to kind of showcase the experiences of all the communities in Chicagoland.
Yeah, I'm very excited that you asked this question. So this is something that from the founding of the company was at the basis of what we want to do is to really share the experience of all the spectacular people of the city. And they're not always the most powerful and the most wealthy. And they come from all kinds of different backgrounds, races, genders, you name it. So in all of our tours, just simply by going to various sides of the city, that in itself, as we all know, Chicago is one of the most segregated cities in the country. And we will go into experiencing and talking about the different, whether it's immigrant groups or Great Migration influence on Chicago. Also, you know, Mexican culture in Chicago is so huge. We have the second largest population of Mexicans outside of Mexico. There's so many different stories to the people of Chicago. We integrate, there's people, when you ask people about the history of Chicago and you ask them to name women, most people can't name more than 3 women. And so we've been doing every year, we have an event called Badass Women of Chicago History. It's a storytelling event. Yeah, it's really awesome. We have storytellers tell live the stories of the women that you haven't heard of. And we've done it 3 years in a row. It sells out every year. It's so cool because there's so many mind-blowingly awesome women from history that didn't make it into the books. We also like to focus on, we just did a really cool live virtual tour about LGBT history in the late 1800s Chicago. And we also do go by Bronzeville. We have a Jazz, Blues, and Beyond tour, which talks about music history and, of course, goes into Chicago as a mecca for Black culture over, more than the past century. That's just, I could go on and on about that topic, but that is definitely central to what we're doing, and there's always more that can be done to integrate different kinds of perspectives and voices. I mean, one thing that we do is on our Jazz, Blues, and Beyond tour, we have video clips with archival interviews with whether it's like journalists or actual musicians, so that we can get different perspectives and different voices into the tour. And there's just infinite amounts of amazing things that can be done to make history be told from a more equal perspective.
It's fascinating hearing you kind of talk and relay what it is that you do in your business, right? We can actually get the passion of what it is that you're hoping to do. But what brought you into this? Were you always this history nerd? Were you always like wanting to show the rest of the world what Chicago has to offer?
No, it's funny you ask me that. I hated history.
Oh, no.
It was my least favorite topic. I loved stories. And so I loved like English class, and that was really my kind of route. But then my roots are as a creative person. And so I eventually studied art history. I got passionate about talking to people about what they are looking at, essentially. And then I worked for Rick Steves for a decade. He's got a PBS show about travel in Europe. Italy was my specialty. So I learned how to really be a tour guide, working with the Rick Steves company, and took groups of Americans all around the country on group tours. And then, I'm sorry if I'm giving you the long...
No.
No, this is fascinating.
Okay, so
Sarah's got the biggest crush on Rick, so I mean, she cannot hear enough about him.
Okay, so flashback to like, I don't even know however long, but when I first came into this country, the first, like, my English wasn't the best, right? So my family wanted me to kind of learn the American accent and kind of pick up how to talk and how to speak and how to read and pronounce words appropriately according to the American language. So American English language. So I used to watch a lot of Sesame Street on PBS, and the second show that I always used to watch was Rick Steves' show on PBS. And I've always wanted to kind of go somewhere other than this country. So Raza, for our anniversary, actually took me to Italy, and to prepare for that trip, we watched numerous hours of Rick Steves' show going to Italy. So I'm forever grateful to you for helping us prepare for our vacation. That is fantastic.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I'm sure I used to do the research on the guidebooks too in Italy. So there very likely may have been tips that I wrote that, helped your trip. You never know. There was a lot of work I did on the guidebooks too, if you happen to use those. And then, all the people in the program are former colleagues of mine too. So it was awesome. Italy is always going to be deep in my heart, and I've just always loved Chicago, and always just felt like, what an incredible place, and why are people not really telling all the aspects of Chicago history, and thus, was born the company Chicago Detours. We're actually celebrating 10 years this year.
Ooh, congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a surprise all around,
Well, this is absolutely great, and we're going to take our next commercial break to talk about some of the local businesses that help support us. But when we come back, we kind of want you and Tom to both kind of chime in on how business community has been affected by what we've dealt with, and what the plan is to have that brighter future ahead, because both of you have great ideas that I'm sure is going to have plenty of successes when the work's put in. Let's hear how you guys are going to put that work in right after these breaks.
Life, Love, and the Grind is proudly sponsored by Rich Lewandowski and our friends at Breaker Press, Chicagoland's top choice for union printing. We're a third-generation family-owned business that has been helping unions and political campaigns win since 1976. We've been involved in hundreds of winning elections, and we get our printed materials to you on time and on budget every time. Whether you're running for the courthouse or the White House, we will take you from concept to design and from print to mail or your supporters' front yards. Breaker Press can help you reach the voters you need. Call Rich at 773-852-5733 or email rich@breakerpress.com. For all of your political printing needs, visit us at breakerpress.com.
Hi, everyone. So we are back here with Tom Szklarski and Amanda Scotese. So Tom is the owner of Waggy Tails and the co-host of the podcast Who's Training Who. Amanda is executive director of Chicago Detours. And forever we're joined with Sean Allen, Raza Siddiqui, and myself here. So welcome back, everyone.
Yeah, and so the next aspect of what we want to talk to, we've kind of talked about the passion that you guys have had in creating the businesses of your dreams, right? The work that you've done to lead you to the point that you are now. And then this pandemic hit, and small businesses were affected, and definitely changed the course of where we were going. Kind of talk about some of the ways that you have kept your business relevant and growing in this situation, and what the goals are to continue that.
So we'll start with Tom.
All right. So, this pandemic has been a double whammy on me, because I still was working as a freelance camera operator and trying to work my way into working with dogs more. And so both industries are useless right now. And I never did news, so I could never, work in news and do that stuff. But anyway, so I still have a couple clients who kept calling me, and I'm still working, doing that, just kind of waiting for people to start going back to work, to start, realizing, hey, I need my dog to get out of the house while I do meetings, or something like that. So it's just working, trying to promote. I'm working with a new startup company that's going to be creating a really gigantic facility that's going to offer a one-stop shop for your dog. And so we're in the process of getting closer. We're waiting for the town that we're going to go to approve everything, and then go from there. There's no guarantee in that, so I still got to push forward with Waggy Tails more, and just trying to get people to get going. But for me, it's just trying to prove. It's just like any small business, it's proving why people should use me. And I'm trying to, doing that with the website and trying to make sure that people know that, I'm Pet Tech certified and Pet CPR, and and I'm the best person to take care of your dog. I'm trying to put that out there without totally shoving it in people's faces. But, it's kind of hard because there's, I'm competing with college kids. I'm competing with, somebody down the street who does it just on the side for cheaper, and so there's a lot of reasons why you should hire someone who's a professional, but, so it's hard, and I'm trying to get where it's starting to pick up now. People are starting to call back or trying to reach out, but, it's not, both industries, whether it's television or this, it's kind of hard because there just isn't a lot of work, and there's a lot of people who are looking for work at the same time.
Amanda, I'm going to go to you with the exact same question, because obviously tourism kind of ground to a halt, but you've kind of reinvented, or not reinvented, but rediscovered a way to tell the story of Chicago. Tell us about that and why you're doing it for free.
So when all of this happened, I just, it was all so uncertain, and I knew I had to do something. And I had to do it quick, and I had to just go for it. I just felt like it was an opportunity. And so we decided to do these live free virtual tours. And I've always been, I learned very early on in my business that we don't do anything for free. You get what you pay for, and there's value to paying for something that's a quality thing. But the difference is that on the internet, we're used to having access to content for free, whether it's something written, whether it's the radio, that kind of a thing. And I also really felt like this was going to be a great opportunity to reach new people who might really love what we do with Chicago Detours. So that's why we chose to do it for free during quarantine.
And how do you see yourself getting back when the economy kind of opens and people are able to gather? Tell us what the long and short-term goals are.
So in the short term, we think we'll be doing some tours, maximum 10 people, a scaled back schedule, and also some small group private tours. We're imagining those are going to be more family than corporate, but we're doing a ton of virtual tours for private groups. So that means that a family group or a corporate group, they want to have some kind of an experience together. They can choose the tour that the location they want to go to, whether it's a neighborhood in Chicago or a specific topic like women's history or Al Capone history or something like that. We've got a whole list of different options for them to choose from. And then they can virtually, through a Zoom meeting we get together, and then the tour guide shares the experience, and everybody in the meanwhile can be in the chat asking questions, saying, families, they've got inside jokes with each other or whatever. They put all kinds of things in the comments. And it's really fun and interactive. We like to ask people questions about some of the things that they're seeing and make it kind of conversational. So that's the private virtual tours. And if you had told me that we were going to be doing this like 6 months ago, I would have said, what are you talking about? We're a human-centered business. We have to have human contact. That's what we're all about. But this virtual thing this world that we've been thrust into, it's been a big surprise for us, and people really love it. And we're booking a lot of these private virtual tours and finding that this is going to be part of our business going forward.
And I'm going to take a moment to editorialize because we always talk about throughout this process to support your local businesses, support the fixtures that are investing back into your community. And no better opportunity to do that in your own city than with the situation we're dealing with. Everyone, Sarah included, mostly Sarah, no exception but Sarah, is always talking about we should go to Europe, we should go do this, we should go do that. I think we've kind of been given... Are you just saying
that I spent a whole bunch of money?
Because I do. I'm just saying explore the options here. We really have an opportunity to spend that time with the family that we've always said, I wish we had more time to spend with the family. And we really have a chance to explore the gems in our own backyard, which are within driving distance. And now we have found an organization that's helping to do that. So I really encourage all of our listeners who are hearing these stories to support this small business, to go out there and kind of really see the treasures in their own backyard, see the history that made Chicago what it is, good, bad, everything about it. We were talking about the segregational history. There was an amazing book called American Pharaoh, I believe, which talks about how infrastructures like the Dane Ryan Expressway were physically made for that division. Learn about it. Learn about why the city of Chicago looks the way it does and be able to, discuss it. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and Raza, I don't know if the rest of the audience knows this, but Raza took me to a tour of the Cliff Dwellers on one of our first Chicago architecture tours that we had taken. Little did I know that tour was going to turn into a place where him and I were going to get married. So build these lasting memories with your family, with your loved ones, because these are the things that will continue to carry forward in your life. Especially when it comes to supporting small businesses. Bigger ventures, bigger companies out there will not cater to you and your personal needs the best way that our small businesses do. They make this entire experience all about you and your growth and your personal connection, like the inner jokes that you talk about with your family, calling each other mouse or something like that, right, Raza? That's something that you
she
don't
calls
have.
our little one, that just to clarify. But one thing I will say, because again, a lot of this is about the storytelling and finding the right people to tell the story. And I know you had talked to Amanda about certain interviews you do that shared. I'm sure Sean Allen is a labor leader, as am I myself. We would love to contribute to tell the story of this magnificent city that we live in and kind of the labor perspective of it. So keep us in mind for that as well.
Sure. I mean, that is a huge, no matter what, the roots of Chicago go back to the laborers, the people who actually built this city, the industry, the buildings, everything. It's the, absolute roots of the city.
And Sean, you still with us? It looks like we lost Sean, but Sean, I just spoke for you and volunteered you for a project. But we really appreciate both of you kind of joining us and telling us a little about what you have done to create your little niche in the city of Chicago to further the story and further what we do, to bring our passion and our love into a business aspect. Sir, what's your closing words?
No, I think, we were talking about this all during the show. We call this taking a detour, right? So no matter where we are, it's that time to jump off the main road and kind of explore new ideas, new initiatives, new ventures, and explore them to their fullest. And by having our two lovely guests here today, Tom and Amanda, we've kind of talked about where their life was before and now where they're pivoting to and continuing to expand the brand that each of their companies have brought forth. Let me ask kind of, Amanda, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about how our viewers and listeners out there can go to your site, plug your show, plug your tours. Let us know what we can do to find out more about you and your tours, and then we'll do the same thing with Tom. So, Amanda?
Sure. So ChicagoDetours.com is where you can find information about doing a private virtual tour or a private in-person driving tour in Chicago. You can also find our entire listing of our free virtual tours that we're doing daily in June, and register for all of those there. And also we'll be launching our walking tours there soon. And then we're on all the social media. It's at Chicago Detours for anything, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. We're always sharing cool things about Chicago history and architecture through those outlets.
Fantastic. And Tom, how can people get in touch with you?
So you can go to my website, waggytails.pet, P-E-T. That has all the info about what I do. It has the podcast, my blog. I do service the Naperville and surrounding communities around there for dog walking, for dog sitting, if people are traveling. I know a couple of my clients have started to travel slowly, so I've done some walks and sitting for them. It's great to start doing dog walking if you did it before and you haven't for this whole pandemic, but you're starting to go. It's good to get it back going. Give your dog somebody else to interact with, something else to do while you can go do your job. Please subscribe to the podcast, Who's Training Who. Support us that way to always get the latest info. We have cool guests that come on that talk, that do cool things for dogs or with dogs. And, the podcast was part of the pandemic of just getting something to be able to get info out to people to have better relationships with their dog. And that's what I hope when you listen to the podcast, that it helps you have a better relationship with your dog and any dog you meet, and to kind of demystify dogs and maybe clear up some of the myths that we have too, that, now we know dogs all have their own personalities. They all, just like humans, you need to understand that not every dog is the same.
Well, fantastic. We want to thank both Tom and Amanda from Chicago Detours and Tom from owner of Waggy Tails for coming on and sharing your story and a little about your experiences throughout the pandemic and going forward.
And I want to thank Sean Allen for volunteering to be on Amanda's next virtual tour with his first date ever. No, I'm just kidding. Totally kidding. But no, I really appreciate all of the fathers that are out there with us that we can go to for guidance, and especially those who have left us and who are looking down for us from heaven. So happy Father's Day to all of you, and have a lovely rest of your weekend.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks so much for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Photo opportunity.